Greetings, this is Artie from Artifact Electronics, and today we are going to softmod this original Xbox. Now, what is softmodding, you may ask, and we'll get to that real soon, but let's talk about the original Xbox a little bit first. This was released in November of 2001 and was Microsoft's first entry into the gaming console market. It is essentially a PC that was similar to mid-level PCs in 2001, but of course it's not meant to be a general-purpose PC, so you can plug in your keyboard, hook up a monitor, and happily program away, but rather an appliance that plays games that are hopefully licensed through Microsoft. You buy the DVDs, you put them in here, and you play your games. The business model of a lot of gaming consoles, is that they try to sell the hardware as cheaply as possible to get people to invest or commit themselves to their platform. So profit margins are slim, meager, non-existent, or even negative sometimes on sales of the hardware. Of course, when it's first released, there are a lot of people who will run out and buy it for a full list, at which point they'll make some money on it. But in order to keep sales going in the long term, you have to keep dropping prices on it, and eventually you get to a point where there really isn't a lot left over when you sell one of these. However, the profit margin on DVDs is pretty high, and since this machine is locked tight, which means you and I can't just go and write code for it and burn a DVD and run it on here. Microsoft is the one who manufactures all of the DVDs, and that's a very convenient way for Microsoft to collect their royalties beforehand when you have them manufacture a game. They, of course, also have to approve your game. They look at it, play it, test it. Does it work right? Is there anything objectionable in it? And so they have a monopoly on their own device and software for it. There are hardware locks in here. There are master keys on the motherboard that the hard drive, which sits under here, and the DVD drive, which sits under here, are tied to, which means you can't exchange them with other Xboxes, much less take out a hard drive here and put it in your PC. It won't work. It's basically serial number locked, and you have to send these things back, or had to send these things back to Microsoft to get them fixed if anything went wrong. Some smart people actually went in and figured out that you could reflash the firmware in the DVD drive, so that if your DVD drive failed, instead of paying a lot of money to a service center, you could get one out of another Xbox, reflash it, so that it would run on another Xbox, which in itself is the first mention of actual softmodding it. So people came up with a way to softmod the DVD drive. And what that really means is, instead of cutting wires and putting new chips in, you basically, by flashing the drive, could modify it so that it would run on different Xboxes. That didn't work on the hard drive, which was serial locked to the motherboard. So in the beginning, you were basically limited to being able to replace your DVD drive if it failed, but that's about as far as you could go. So back to real softmodding, people looked at this and said, hey, I got a PC, and especially as this console got older and older, the prices on it dropped. Remember, they were selling it as cheaply as possible, so you would go out and buy games for it, but people thought they were smarter than that and said, well, what if I can buy this thing cheaply and use it to set up a server in my basement, or buy several and set up a server farm in my basement? That would be great, except you couldn't program it. There was no official way. I mean, if you were a developer, Then you would get development systems that had some of the protection removed, so you could actually code for it on a PC and upload your code to it. But for the general public, you had to be approved by Microsoft, become a licensed developer, and pay large amounts of money. If I recall correctly, a developer deck costs somewhere like $14,000 or $15,000, so not everybody could get into that. And of course, you had to sign your life away in order to gain access to it. So people got interested in cracking the Xbox, opening it up, seeing if they could circumvent the security in here. And at first, people tried, and it was locked up pretty good, in that you couldn't just pull out a ROM or a flash ROM and read it outside the machine and then disassemble it, because everything was encrypted. But an enterprising young man, I think his name was Bunny, a few years after this came out, started working on decoding and cracking this thing. And what he did was, I think initially, since you couldn't read the ROM, he actually hardware modified it and bus monitored it, and thus captured, when you turned on the machine, read the instructions flowing over the bus at a particular point where they were already decrypted, of course, and thus started building a library of what the ROM did. And one of the advantages of doing it that way is it's almost like running it in a debugger, because you're getting the instructions are executing in sequence already, so you can see that how it's executing, and when it's calling something, does it come back, does it not come back, does the receiving end do something weird with the return addresses. So there's a little bit of help in that. It's still a long and arduous process, but I think it got to the point where Bunny had a bunch of code, and he was able to suck some of the encrypted code out of this, and at which point he wrote a bunch of scripts to try to find the encryption key. And I'm not sure of the details. I will leave a reference to his book in the description below. But after he had some code, word has it that he wrote a bunch of scripts to try different encryption keys. And I don't know whether he used brute force or made some good guesses or whatever. He started running the script, realized that it was late at night and he had to go to class early in the morning. And I guess just before going to bed, a short while later, he came back to see if his scripts were still running or they had crashed. And to his surprise, the scripts reported that they had found a key. In the days and weeks following that, he further investigated that, and he had in fact found the master key for the Xbox. And after that happened, he got a bunch of other people involved in it, and it basically had an avalanche effect in that a lot of people started working on this, adding to the work, and working towards finding out what made this thing tick and how you could open it up to the public. So the first approach was, of course, essentially putting a new flash ROM into it that you could freely program, that would be recognized by the system because they had the key for it. But of course that entailed opening up the machine and installing a small daughter board with a flash ROM and some other logic in there, connecting it to the proper points inside the machine, and then writing code for it to further delve into what they hadn't found yet. It was an iterative process, but of course it required you to open the Xbox, which voided your warranty. And there was the traces, of course, are very close to each other. The access points are very close, so there was always a lot of potential to damage the machine, and you couldn't send it back for repair. But people sacrificed and went on, and that was called hard modding it. Basically, hardware modification of it, which was a daughter board that you and I could buy. It was, I think, between $100 to $150. You had to open up the Xbox, put the daughter board in, solder it to certain places, and then when you turned on the Xbox, all of a sudden, it opened up, which means you could FTP to it from your PC. You could start copying DVDs for archival purposes, of course, because the DVDs are also encrypted, and turn it into a media center. Even though Microsoft supported their own media center, people started modifying it and doing all sorts of things, making the discs. So you were able to play it was region free as far as DVDs were concerned. And it pretty much became an inexpensive PC at that point. But it was still expensive to mod it. A lot of people didn't know how to do it. So development on opening the Xbox continued. So that brings us to the theme of today's episode, which is soft modding this, which means software modification. In very, very simple terms, what the group of people who were opening up the security on this finally came up with was they realized that after being able to put a hard mod in it, writing their own code, and figuring out what was all going on in here, they finally figured out that you didn't need the hardware, that you could actually write code. They had enough knowledge at that point to write code that would allow you to reflash this machine. So it was a long process to get there, but they finally got there. And nowadays you can download the required software for free, and when you're done, you have opened the Xbox. What can you do with it now? You can, some of the things are, of course, as mentioned. You can hook up to it, hook up to the file system through FTP. You can rip DVD games for archival purposes. Yeah, right. You can upload the game images to your PC, so you can keep a huge library of games on your PC and then download them as required, because this came with a 6 gig drive, and DVD games can take anywhere from 300 megs up to, I guess, 4 or 6 gigs. So there wasn't a whole lot you can store on the internal drive. So you could go back and forth, but there were people creating applications that you could now download to here, and if you wanted to run a web server with this, you could do so. So what do we need to soft mod it? Well, first of all, we need a working Xbox. Xboxes, at least in the US, can still be had between $10 to $15. One thing you should try to make sure of is that the Xbox hasn't been opened yet, i.e. nobody's tried to repair it or mod it or whatever. You need a working Xbox that's essentially virgin. And how do you tell whether it's been opened or not? Well, it's got the warranty void when sticker removed approach here. It's got some screws under the rubber feet, but it's also got 2 screws under these tamper-proof labels. And the way you can find them is you run your finger over it, and you'll find a circular dimple in here, and there's a screw under here, and the same over here. So what happens is, if you're opening up the Xbox, you're going to have to make a hole in here and here, and since these are tamper-proof labels, it's very difficult to get them off, and I don't think anybody would have really made an effort to replicate them or reprint them or whatever, just open them up. So if you buy an Xbox and it's got holes in the labels, then it's been opened up, and as I said, either repaired or attempted to be repaired or hard modded. Well, if it's hard modded, then you don't need to soft mod it, it's already done. But if you get a clean, unopened Xbox, then the next thing to do, of course, is to test it, to make sure that it runs correctly. So just a simple operational test. It obviously boots up and displays stuff. Another interesting thing is a lot of these second-hand Xboxes basically have a user history in them, and that is in the form of save games. So if we go to memory and go to the hard drive, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of games on this one, or game saves, which I guess you could theoretically reuse if you had the right games. You can go in and delete them. They don't really use up that much space. I like to keep them around because I never know when I'm going to be playing FIFA 07, Goblin Commander, or whatever. There's a whole bunch of them here. Kung Fu Chaos. I mean, the way you get rid of them is you just click on the one that's highlighted and you will get the option to delete. And it's gone. No big deal. But you cannot clear out all the save games at once. You have to basically do that for every single one. But you can get a good idea of what sort of games the former owner liked. Other than that, let's try to see if the drive works, if the DVD drive works. Obviously the hard drive is good because it's showing us all the save games and it's booting from it. But let's load a game. And of course make sure the tray opens. These do tend to develop problems where the tray doesn't open and it's usually just the drive belt that has gone soft or has been stretched. So let's see. Now if the logo shows up on the screen, when that logo shows up, basically means that security test passed and the machine validated the DVD. It's an official legal CD and it goes ahead and loads things in it. The controller, does that work? Press start. Okay, so that seems to work, but there's a few more things we need. We need a USB stick adapter. Has a female controller, Xbox controller plug on one end, and a male USB plug on the other. You can get these from eBay. I guess you could build your own if you ripped apart a joystick and a USB cable, but these are under $10 and probably a lot easier to do that. We then need a USB stick to inject the software into it that will allow you to softmod it. I mean the softmodding software itself, and an exploit to get into the Xbox, which is probably the most clever part about how this was all done. I haven't had anything to do with this. I just sit here and admire people who spent all of their time coming up with these exploits, disassembling lots and lots and lots of code. The USB stick should be 4 gigs or less. And I understand nowadays getting something 4 gigs or less may be a bit of a challenge, but it'll lose its mind if you put something greater than 4 gigs in it, so try to get something 4 gigs or less. And another thing is that not all USB sticks are recognized by the Xbox. I don't have a list, and if the one you get doesn't work, keep trying others. That's I can't give you any better advice for that. And what you also need is a copy of Splinter Cell. That is used to actually exploit the OS to get in there and give us the ability to soft mod it. Now let me look up, there are some other games that can be used. I think Mechassault or 007 Agent Under Fire can also be used in a very similar fashion. These games are easy to come by. I mean, you can literally walk into a pawn shop and buy one of these for a few bucks. Now, some people have said that there's an original release of this and then a greatest hits. And some people said the greatest hits doesn't work. I have tried both of them and they work just fine. So whatever Splinter Cell you can find, pick it up. And that's what we're going to be using in today's presentation. And this is all the hardware you're going to need to do this. We'll also need some software, which is free. First one is called Explorer 360. I'll list the file names in the description. I'm not gonna. I usually don't put direct links in there because then people come and complain to me and said I used your link and I got malware installed and stuff like that. I have no control over that. Be aware that if you're downloading something for free, the webmaster is going to try to make money off of you. Now, he may just fool you into downloading yet another PDF reader, which is benign, but then, you know, that can escalate to malware and viruses and all sorts of stuff. So you can use Google and do a search for the file names that I list in the description, and then you're on your own downloading it and virus checking it. So it's Explorer 360, and we also need the Softmod installer Deluxe. Basically, a menu-driven system has been created, so there's really not a whole lot you have to do other than navigating menus. And so with all of that said, we now need to go and prepare our USB stick. So I have here a 1 gig stick, and of course everything that is on here is going to get lost, so back it up. And one thing to do, it's probably a good idea, not absolutely necessary, but I would go to the PC, put this in, and do a quick format on it. FAT32, anything like that. Because all those are things that the Xbox doesn't like. And there's no format command on here. But the way it works is if you plug this in through the through the adapter cable we have, the Xbox is going to try to read it, and if it can't read it, it's going to go ahead and format it without first warning you. It's just going to format it, and I'll show you the message that it'll give you. So you stick a USB stick into the Xbox, whatever was on there is going to be gone. And the way this works is, let's see. So we plug it in. Then we go to memory. And since we're plugged into controller port 4, it's telling us that unit 4A, the memory unit you inserted, isn't working correctly. It has been erased. So what that means is I didn't recognize the format, and I went ahead and formatted it so that I can read it. The reason is the Xbox uses the FatX file system, which only the Xbox recognizes. A PC will recognize the stick, as we'll see later, but it won't like the FatX. But now we have a stick formatted in the native Xbox format. And now we got to go to the PC and essentially inject all of the software we need to do the Softmod. So here are the two pieces of software. The Softmod installer Deluxe version 5.11 Final. I very much doubt that there'll be a 5.12 or higher version of it out there. And of course Xbox 360, which is used to prepare the USB stick. Now this you should just install. I mean, it doesn't really have an install. I think when you run this it puts the files into a different directory and an icon on your desktop. And I have that installed here somewhere, Explorer 360, and you run it and it looks like this. Not much to look at. Next thing to do is extract the Softmod installer right here. It'll create a directory, and here are all the files that you're going to possibly need. You're not going to use all of them. I mean, the one thing to do is you want to use the SID 511 installer.usb. So we extract that here. And note that it created a udata directory where it put another subdirectory with very descriptive names. But don't worry about it, the Xbox will tell you what these mean. And the second thing we need to do, depending on what exploit you're going to use, in our case it's going to be Splinter Cell NTSC. So we extract that here, and it'll dump it also into udata. And we now have two directories here, and these need to be put on the USB stick. And that's where Explorer 360 comes in. So the first thing we need to do is plug in our USB stick and pay very close attention here, because a warning will pop up. And what that warning says, you need to format the disk and drive, whatever your drive number is, before you can use it. Why? It detected that it's a non-compatible FAT file system in there, and it wants to go ahead and reformat it so that it can read it. But this is an unequivocal cancel. We do not want to mess with the format on there. And even though the PC Windows can't write to it, Explorer 360 can. So now we go to Drive, Open, Hard Drive or Mem Card. And when it says partition 0, what that means is that Explorer 360 recognized your USB stick. So now what we do is, I guess we can just drag and drop these things over there onto partition 0. I think this hit the progress bar. It did. That one was quick. This one is going to take a little bit longer. And so what did it do? It's hiding. There you go. So now it sits there and basically copies this. This is going to take a while, because I guess the injection procedure isn't the fastest in the world. Okay, we're still copying, but we should be done real quickly, and we are. Now, of course, notice that nothing changed on Explorer 360, but I think that's just negligent UI programming, because if you do something over here, you click on that, and it shows you that it in fact copied over the two subdirectories to the USB stick. So basically now we're done. We're done with the prep work on the PC. Make sure to close up everything, safely eject the USB stick, and we go back to the Xbox. Okay, we're back at the Xbox. Let's see if this worked. Here's the USB end of our converter cable. We plug that in. And it detects it. Now what we need to do is copy those two subdirectories that we put on the USB stick onto the hard drive. And that we can do, the Xbox allows it, because you can mix and match your save games. You can put in memory cards into the Xbox and copy your save games over and then go play them at your friend's house or whatever. And so even though this is an exploit, we're fooling the Xbox into thinking that these are just save games. So we cursor over to it, and there's our SID 511 installer and our Splinter Cell exploit. So let's copy this one over. Now you have to go and actually select, make sure that your selection is in here, because otherwise you won't be able to copy it. And then you just say copy, and copy to the hard disk. And that was very quick. We back out of it, go up to SID 511, and copy that to the hard disk. And again, that's going to take a little while. Alright, that took a few minutes, but we're done. So back out using the B button, and now when we look in the list of things that are on the list of save games, we're looking at memory unit 4A, which we want to remove because we will no longer be needing it. Notice that this should disappear when I unplug it, and it does. But now when we go and look at the hard disk, we see the installer for SID and the SID Splinter Cell NTSC exploit on the hard disk. So now we are finally ready to install the Softmod. Take your Splinter Cell DVD and run it. Hopefully this disk will load. Yeah, the drive's spinning up, and that generally means that security was passed and it's actually loading the disk now. So once the game loads, we need to load a save game, which is the exploit. So we go to Start Game. Let's see, that's a little bit bright here. Doesn't make a difference, does it? Oh well. Let's see. And make this any clearer. Yeah, it's a little bit better this way. You can at least see what's on the screen, and it's telling you here are your save games. And if you happen to have any other save games for Splinter Cell, they would also show up here, but you're looking for Linux. That is the exploit. So let's click on it, and checkpoints, and we are soft modding it now. So here's your soft modder startup menu, and the way follow these instructions, because otherwise you may run into trouble. The first thing we want to do is go to Backup, Restore Features, create EEPROM backup. An EEPROM is an electrically erasable programmable read-only memory, and that's used for non-volatile memory in the Xbox. And what we want to do at this point is back that up, so if we ever want to uninstall the soft mod, we can turn the Xbox back into its original state. So backup EEPROM, and we're done. Now we go back to the main menu, and what we need to do is a second backup of some different stuff. So back to backup, but this time we do a create MS backup, and that just backs up a bunch of the files that it's going to have to restore if we want to revert back. So back up your C drive, blah, 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 blah. Yes, continue. Okay. And we're done backing up. It will actually not let you soft mod this if you haven't done the backups. Alright, install single boot Softmod. I guess you can dual boot it, either a normal Xbox or Softmod, but I haven't really tried that, so we're just going to do a single boot. That'll boot into the Softmod itself. Standard for HD. I mean, you can change all of these settings later on, but standard for HD seems to be working well, even though I'm not using HD right now. And then it asks you what you want to do, the Evox dashboard or the Unleash X dashboard. I like the Unleash X dashboard a little better, and I played with it a little more, so that's what I'm going to install. You're welcome to try the other one, but we won't be talking about Evox. So format your C drive and install the Softmod and dashboard. Are you ready to proceed? Yes. Okay, now it's checking to see if I made my backups. It found them. And here we go. Okay, it is all done. Softmod successfully installed. You now must turn off your Xbox in order for the installation to complete. Do you wish to shut down now? Normally you should say yes, but what I'm going to do is say no, because I want to get the DVD out first so it doesn't boot into Splinter Cell again. Ah, see? Beat me again. Okay, take it out. Oh, okay. Didn't even boot it. So yeah, you could have just said yes. It wouldn't have booted off the disk. So you're looking at the main menu in Unleash X. It is now fully soft-modded. So now we can go through and oh, it installed a bunch of stuff already for us. See, you can go back to the boot Softmod menu now, just so you know. So let's say you just did this and you have huge regrets doing this because you figured out it's not your Xbox, it's your friend's Xbox. So what you can do here is basically select Remove Softmod, and it'll put your Xbox back to where it was before. So let's restart it. I've also plugged in an Ethernet cable to my home network, so you can see that, and you can go to the System, Settings, Network, and basically tell it, oh okay, it's using a static IP, but I'm going to change it to a DHCP. Save the settings, and still has a static IP. I think we have to reboot. And now when it boots up, it should actually, DHCP should serve it with a dynamic IP address. Of course, it's a local address. Yep, there you go. It's a 192.168.114 is what got assigned to it. And we're going to need that later on because we are going to FTP into this guy. But other than that, just a few more things. We go to System Settings. You can go around and have fun with this thing. Check out all the settings. What I actually wanted to do is you can change skins on the main menu. That's not it. There, skins. So I like to use the green reloaded. I mean, you can try out the skins, see what they look like. There are other settings. One other thing I usually do is I turn off the screensaver because it annoys me. And it didn't even remember. That's interesting, it didn't remember the skin I put in it. So if I do skins, I guess I didn't set it, I just got it to show it to me, but if we go to green reloaded and then press start exit it. So now maybe it saved it. I don't know. Play around with it. Remember, what I wanted to do is disable. That doesn't look too good, does it? I'm going to go back. This is actually more contrasty on an analog TV, so it's easier to read. But if we go to screen calibration, sound and audio, system, it's just another bunch of settings you have here. Screensaver, red, orange, off. And what else you can do here is you can change the LED color. I mean, by default it decides what colors to use, but you can actually tell it. For instance, the default, you can make the default red, orange, off, green. I like to leave it a color other than green, so I am acutely aware that it is running the Softmod. So we can do flashing green. So there are a lot of customizations in there that you can use. You can also look at the setup, how it partitioned the drive for you. Go to File Explorer, and it'll show you all the drive letters and how much space there is. And I guess if we add all of this up, yeah, it is a 6 gig drive in here, so not a whole lot of room left. But if you click on a particular one, it'll show you what's in there. And there's a game in here left over from an earlier test of mine. I'll show you how to do that, but since there already is a game on here, let's see if we can load that. If it should show up under the games, and it does. So this game sits on the hard drive. We just click on it, and there you go. Never again worry about a damaged DVD. And what we're going to talk about in the future is how to transfer these games to your PC for a correct backup. So this is actually kind of a neat thing because this game itself, because it's got a whole bunch of classic Taito games. And I mean, who doesn't like to play Space Invaders, right? Coin it up and start. Yeah, it's a good game. It's a great game. But anyway, I think we've done enough for this episode. What remains to be done is to see how to talk to it from your PC and give a demo of how to actually read in games and see what other things there are that we can do with this. So I hope you enjoyed watching this, and if you want to see another episode, make sure to leave me a thumbs up. Well, I'm going to do the other episode anyway, but a thumbs up is appreciated nonetheless. Subscribe so you'll know when the next episode is there, and leave me a comment about what you think about all of this, and if you've actually successfully used this guide to softmod your own Xbox. See you soon. There is another piece of information that inadvertently got lost, and kind of mentally insert that into the beginning, into the preparatory stage. You have to make sure that the dashboard on the unmodified Xbox is a certain version, the latest version of the dashboard, because otherwise your softmod may fail. So we need to look up. What you're looking at is, this is a different Xbox running that has not been modded. So this is what your Xbox should look like before any of the modding. You go to Settings and System Info. I mean, there's no really quick way to do this. You basically got to wait for this thing to scroll up, and at the very end it shows you the dashboard version. Your dashboard should be D:1.00.5960.01. And there it is, right here. It is correct already. I can't stop this. I can't... But yes, you just go to System Info and let it scroll and look at your version number. Now, if your version number is not this version number that I just talked about, the easiest way to upgrade your Xbox is to beg, borrow, or steal a copy of Halo 2 and run that on the Xbox. Halo 2 will check for the latest dashboard, and if it's not on the machine, will upgrade your machine for you. Hope that helps out some of you who may have tried to softmod but had it fail because the dashboard was not upgraded.